hello again. Do you know that there are many strange things beneath the waves? Oh, mysterious, magical, marvelous things. But you can't always believe everything you hear. For example, have you heard the tale of the lost city of Atlantis? It's about a whole island of people that live at the bottom of the ocean. How do you suppose they keep their hats on? And then there's a story of a fellow named Neptune who has a big long beard and rides a dolphin. And in Scotland, well, they say they have something called the Loch Ness Monster. It's supposed to be a big creature that lives in a lake. You know, I guess every watery place you can name it, some fantastic story to tell about itself. And here in the big harbor, we have our own special story. And it all began the day that Hank saw a mermaid. It was the morning work meeting, and the tugs were abuzz with the big news. A shipwreck had been found right on the bottom of the big harbor. Well, naturally, George was the first to give us advice. I have the longest tow line, he said, so I could lower it down and pull up the wreck. It's quite a large ship, said Foduck. His computer made a buzzing sound as he figured it out. I'd say it weighs over 60 tons. Emily thought they'd probably only bring up the most valuable things that remained on the wreck. Hank was very excited. Do you think there will be treasure? He said. Maybe it's a pirate ship, said Theodore. There used to be pirates around here. I saw pirates once, said Hank, on Willie's Island. I don't think there are pirates anymore, said Foduck. They were ghost pirates, continued Hank, and they were dancing a pirate dance and singing yo, yo, yo. That's yo, ho, ho, said George. The tugs smiled at each other. They were used to Hank's tall tales. Then they all talked about what other things might be down there, in the very deepest, darkest part of the big harbor. We are going to try and raise the old wreck, interrupted the dispatcher. Then he told them that the Great Ocean Tug and Salvage Company were going to use a barge with special equipment to pull it up. And Hank was given the job of moving the special barge to the wreck site. Hank and Theodore turned to each other with the biggest, widest smiles. They would go together and see the whole thing. Just think, Hank, said Theodore. The ship sank a long, long time ago, and nobody has seen it since. What kind of ship do you think it is? Said Hank. Oh, probably a Viking ship, replied Theodore. Viking? Repeated Hank. Sure, said Theodore. Everyone knows that the Vikings were sailors who visited here 1,000 years ago. Theodore began to dream out loud. I'll help bring the ship up and be famous. Maybe it'll even help me get my V word, Theodore the Viking. Hank and Theodore found the barge whose name was Bonavista, waiting patiently for them at the dock. Is it a Viking ship, Bonavista? Asked Hank. Probably an old sailing ship, replied Bonavista barge. Vikings never came to this harbor. Of course not, said Theodore to Hank. Everyone knows that. The tugs arrived at the site of the sunken ship with Bonavista. They were looking forward to helping out and being the first to see the old wreck. But Bonavista said that she could handle the job just fine. She thanked the tugs, and they turned and headed sadly for home. That night, a storm was blowing in. Couldn't sleep. They were all thinking about the shipwreck. Bonavista's out there right now, said Theodore, bringing her up. 412 fathoms deep, said Foduck. Who knows what he'll find down there? Emily remembered a tale about a giant octopus who lived in a deep, dark hole in the bottom of the ocean. George had heard stories of strange fish all covered with electric lights like Christmas trees, but flat as pancakes with eyes attached to long strings of spaghetti. What could be down there, lying quietly for so long beneath the sea? They all shivered. I know, said Hank, startling the other tugs. A giant lobster with a nose like an elephant. I saw one once. Yes, and I see a tiny tug with a nose like Pinocchio, said Emily. And everyone had a good laugh about that. The wind began to blow harder. We better tie down, said Foduck. Feels like there's a big storm coming. One by one, the The tugs tied themselves safely to the dock and pressed in close to each other. They were still thinking about what might be down there, in the very deepest, darkest part of the big harbor. The next morning dawned bright and clear, with only a few crumbly clouds left over from the night storm. Hank was already up and hurrying out to the shipwreck site where he found Theodore. They smiled excited smiles to each other. They were both thinking the same thing. They couldn't wait to see what the barge had brought up. Bona Vista barge was just waking up. Some pieces of the old shipwreck had been raised to her deck. "What did you find?" asked Theodore. "Was there treasure?" said Hank. "Giant octopuses?" The barge told the tugs that as she was raising part of the old ship, the storm blew a special piece back into the water. "What piece?" asked Hank. But just as the barge was about to say, the tugs heard Petra the pilot boat whistle for them. That meant it was time to go to work. "You better get going," said Bona Vista. Hank and Theodore floated off, more curious than ever about the shipwreck. When Hank had finished his work, he decided to see what interesting things had washed up on the shore from the storm. There was an old yellow bottle, a good crab claw, a piece of driftwood that looked like a cow, and a mermaid, and a bunch of green seaweed, and a mermaid. Well, Hank couldn't believe his eyes. He looked again as hard as he could. And sure enough, there, swimming just beneath the waves, was a mermaid. Oh, she wore a beautiful red dress and had long, flowing green hair. The other tugs were resting at the great ocean dock when Hank came racing up all out of breath. I saw her, he was shouting. "She had a red dress and green hair." "Who?" said Theodore.